And we are live. You already know who it is. My name is Mike Kyle, aka the Fantasy Vulture. I have over a decade worth of fantasy football experience and have continuously competed for fantasy championships over the course of the past 6 seasons. Let's make it 7 in 2020. But enough of me. I'm here for you. On today's episode of the FB Show, we are going to continue our Week 3 game previews, breaking down every single Week 3 matchup, all through the lens of fantasy football. Up next, the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Philadelphia Eagles. If you are excited for this game preview, be sure to hit that like button down below like an open receiver downfield. Also, smash that subscribe button, power running back style, so that you never miss a video from me. We are inching closer and closer to 100 subscribers. Hashtag bless up. And also, you can follow me on all social media platforms at FF Vulture, specifically Twitter. That's the place where I am the most active. It's the place where I answer all of your start-sit questions, trade offers, and anything fantasy football related over there. The conversations and interactions have been extremely fun. But let's move over now to the game of the video, and that is the Bengals and the Eagles. A game that has a lot of fantasy potential, all things considered. So let's just jump right in, shall we? Of course, we're going to start off with the game notes. Cincinnati is a good 0-2 is what I'm defining it as. 0-2 obviously is never a fun spot to be in, but there are some highlights and some silver linings to be in 0-2 if you are the Cincinnati Bengals. Number one, Joe Burrow does look really good and very promising as a rookie quarterback. Obviously, coming in with a nice cast of weapons doesn't hurt whatsoever, and it is only going to help his progression as he gets more acclimated and transitions into being the NFL franchise starting quarterback that Cincinnati hopes for him to be. Those 2 losses include a game. Who did they play week 1? Oh no. Who did they play week 1? Who did the Bengals play week 1? Week 2 they played the Browns. Week 1 they played the Chargers, and they lost that game. They had a chance to tie it up and send it to overtime, and anything could happen at that point. But I thought Burrow looked pretty good in week 1, and obviously week 2 versus the Browns, he looked pretty great as well. Philadelphia, on the other hand, is a bad 0-2. That loss against the Rams, they had some potential to win that game, and just tried to come back too late, and then obviously just blowing a lead versus Washington in week 1, and they got outscored. I think it was 24-0 during the second half of that game. It wasn't pretty at all. Jalen Reagor rookie wide receiver from TCU for the Eagles, tore his UCL in his thumb. This is the exact same injury that Drew Brees had last year. Reagor is expected to miss 6 to 8 weeks. He was placed on injured reserve. Alshon Jeffrey is still out with that foot injury. It looks like there's a chance that he is back on the field next week, though. And as somebody who has been saying you need to stash Alshon Jeffrey on your IR, this is exactly why. Because Reagor's already been injured twice now, and there's got to be someone that steps up for this Eagles offense. And what better player to step off than Carson Wentz's favorite target, Alshon Jeffrey. And there are no injuries to note for the Bengals outside of losing C.J. Uzomah due to a torn Achilles in that game versus the Browns last week. So let's move over to some start-sit questions for this game. For Cincinnati, I think you're still starting Joe Mixon. I understand it's been bad, it's been brutal, he's killed you 2 straight weeks. But Joe Mixon is a talented running back. They just signed him to a massive extension. He is a part of this team for the long haul. And this is what happened with Joe Mixon last year. Joe Mixon got off to a very slow start last year, but if you held and you stayed true to who he is as a player, he paid off in a big way. His second half finish last season won a lot of people, myself included, fantasy championships if you stayed the course, and I do expect there's going to be a positive regression for Joe Mixon coming very, very soon. I understand he's burned you twice already, and it's not going to feel great starting him in this matchup, but I do, and I will probably always have confidence in Joe Mixon just because of the talent that he provides on the football field. Up next, I think A.J. Green and Tyler Boyd are both fine options for you to play this week. Boyd had a good game last week, and then A.J. Green saw a ton of targets, just unfortunately wasn't able to catch a few of them. A few of them were overthrows, there were a few that he just bobbled, and it is what it is, right? But the fact of the matter is A.J. Green is still being heavily targeted, he's still being heavily involved, and I don't think that you go away from that given the circumstances of this game. Lastly, for Cincinnati, Drew Sample, tight end for the Bengals. C.J. Uzomah was carving up the Browns and was seeing heavy targets in that game. And granted, the Browns are not great against tight ends, so that's probably why they were exploiting that matchup just a little bit. But Drew Sample, once Uzomah went down, had 9 targets alone. So last week, let's pull this up. How many targets did Uzomah have before he got injured? So Uzomah had 6 targets before the injury, caught 4 of them, and then Sample had 9. So 15 targets last week went to the tight end position. We saw what Burrow did with Thad Moss at the tight end position at LSU, and he basically made Thad Moss relevant. So there is a clear willingness to throw to the tight end position from Joe Burrow. So in deeper leagues, if you need a start, Drew Sample could be a guy who you're looking at, specifically in Dynasty. He'd be a great pickup this year. Like I said, second year guy. So there is potential for him for the future of this Bengals team. And then moving over to the Philadelphia Eagles here, very, very simple. You're going to start Miles Sanders. You're going to start Zach Ertz. You're going to start Dallas Goedert if you got him. And you're going to start DeSean Jackson. I think this game has one of the higher chances of turning into a shootout. And that's what I look for, honestly, when it comes to some plays for fantasy, especially if you have Goedert. To me, a lot of people say start Goedert, like you have the ability to start him week in, week out. I'm personally not there yet. I understand why some people say that, just because of how much work he is involved. But to me, the tight end position is one of those things where I'm not usually willing to risk the biscuit for. Because if you bust, there is always that chance of your opponent's tight end having that safe game, and I'm not willing to tank a position like that, just swinging for the fences. So in this matchup, though, with Jalen Reagor out, still no Alshon Jeffrey, somebody has to step up for the Eagles, and just seeing the usage of the tight ends, I think Goedert is a fine play this week. And similarly with DeSean Jackson, somebody has to step up. DeSean Jackson hasn't really done it yet. Last week was okay, but I think that Jackson's a guy that you could play, especially against this bad Bengals defense. And speaking of this bad Bengals defense, Carson Wentz, dude, this is it, right? There has been so much talk about how bad Carson Wentz has been this season, and rightfully deserved, right? Just going through the fantasy numbers specifically, in week 1, he had 11 points, and then in week 2, he had 12. And this is Carson Wentz. This is an MVP candidate in 2017. This is a guy who was that first round draft pick when he came out. And for whatever reason, it's just looked like he's lost it so far. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Nothing's changed. And this was a guy who we were seriously drafting, in that 5th, 6th round territory just a few years ago. And now all of a sudden he was sliding into that 10th, 11th round range this season. And I don't really know what it is, right? The weapons, sure, right? We've known that. We've known that the Eagles receivers have been dropping like flies for the past 3 years, right? This is nothing new. This team is just perpetually injured. But with Wentz still has the talent and the ability to make players better, and he just hasn't looked good this season. So luckily, the quarterback position is deep enough to where if Wentz doesn't prove it in this game, you can probably cut him and pick somebody else up. But that being said, he does have a great matchup in this game against the Bengals. If he can't get it done here, again, I've talked about this with a few players this week. It's that 3-week window, right? I'm not willing to cut bait until after 3 weeks because that's when I feel like I have an actual understanding of where the player is at, whether it's on the depth chart or just usage or things like that. So after this 3rd week, if he can't get it done in this kind of matchup and such a plus matchup, I'm willing to cut bait, essentially, with Wentz if I have to. Again, this is another one of those games where I've been saying all week that week 3 just has a lot of games where it's pretty cut and dry. There aren't a whole lot of questions surrounding who you're starting, who you're sitting. Everything is pretty easy for the week. And honestly, sometimes we have to celebrate these kind of weeks in that way because the stress for setting your lineup is at a minimal level. So that's going to do it for my Bengals and Eagles week 3 game preview. Oh my god, I still have 5 more of these to do. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. We're trying to do this for every single week 3 game. As I just said, I got like 5 more of these things to do tonight. You can also follow me on all social media platforms at FFVulture, specifically Twitter. That's where I interact the most. Again, thank you so much for watching. Remember, people come and go, but fantasy championships are forever, and I will see you in the next video.